where we part company. I think that anarchists and socialists traditionally have envisioned this democratic planning, this worker-controlled economy, this people-controlled economy, in sort of two different ways. And I've passed out, I only made up 25 copies. I didn't think there were this many people interested in this copy. But some of you have copies of the sort of paper I would deliver if I was going to take more time. And there's two parts of it that I'll sort of read from just to give you an idea of what it is I think that socialists have had right and understood well, and what then they haven't. And what it is that anarchists have understood well, and yet what it is they haven't understood well. Before doing that, let me say this about this whole subject. What comes after capitalism is not going to somehow work out spontaneously, easily, correct. Just forget it. If the history of the 20th century proves nothing else, it's that, we're not going to have an immediate, easy response to what to replace capitalism with. It's not just something we can leave to when the time comes. And of course, once the foot has been lifted from the workers, they will immediately know exactly how to go about, running an economy in a way that is truly democratic, is truly fair, is truly participatory, etc. This is something that's going to take a lot of thinking. So it's not natural, and the answers aren't obvious. And I think something else that this is the last thing we'll agree on is the quality of debate on this subject has got to increase dramatically. If for no other reason, that anti-capitalists actually have a legacy of historical failure that we have to answer for. For the population of the world at large, in their minds, rightly or wrongly, in their minds, those who said capitalism is terrible, a better system that's not capitalist is what we need, we don't have a great track record in terms of sort of the non-capitalist things that have happened out there in the past. So sensible people have very good reason to look at us and judge us according to, do you really know what you're doing? It didn't always work out well when anti-capitalists got into a situation where they could control something and set something up. So can you really demonstrate to us that this time you really do have the right idea? Well, the only way to do that is essentially to dramatically improve the quality of our thinking on this subject, and also to pray to hell that there are some places in the world where these ideas start to get put into practice and people can see it's not just that they're thinking clearly, they're talking about doing something very different that's never been done before. Maybe they sound like they got it right this time, but I still would like to see if it's really working someplace. So that's the combination that's going to actually work for us. Now, to the issue of what it is that I think socialists have been really right about and really wrong about, and what anarchists have been really right and wrong about. What socialists have long understood is that what any one group in an economy does will inevitably affect many others. The conclusion many socialists have drawn from this fact is that democratic planning must allow all to have a voice and say regarding all economic decisions. And this is correct as far as it goes. The problem is different decisions, different economic decisions do not usually affect everyone to the same extent. One might call this the fundamental dilemma faced by those of us who want to organize a system of economic decision-making that gives people decision-making power to the degree they are affected by different economic decisions. Most economic decisions do affect many people, but not to differing degrees. I think a lot of socialist-oriented thinking about the alternative to capitalism has essentially failed to recognize the differential degree of effects and has focused on all these economic decisions and all these resources really affect us all, so we all have to be part of making those decisions. What authoritarian planning, as we now should well know, discourages worker and consumer participation because it disenfranchises them. While those who advocate democratic planning do so to give people more control over economic decisions that affect them, badly designed systems of democratic planning might continue to discourage worker and consumer participation in a different way. And this is where anarchists have had things right. If worker and consumer councils have no autonomous area of action regarding their own work and consumption activities, but must submit to seemingly endless discussion, debate, and negotiations about what they want to do together with many others in many different planning bodies, even if these planning bodies are democratic, even if those who are elected to these planning bodies are truly representative of those they represent, ordinary workers and consumers may still well lapse back into apathy, even if there's no authoritarian planning procedure that disenfranchises them. Somehow, you have to give people more control. You have to give them the degree of autonomy that will make them want to actually engage in economic decision making. And that means that there has to be a degree of autonomy in the process of democratically coordinating an economy for people in their own workplaces and for people in their own neighborhoods. Now, how do you manage that? I think anarchists have basically failed to answer the how is the overall coordination. They have focused on the sort of autonomous, the need for autonomy. And I think traditional socialists have been blind to the necessity of that kind of autonomy. On the other hand, how one does this coordination in a way that is fair and that is efficient and does not take up too much time, it's just not an intellectually easy problem. Now, I'm not going to give a long speech about participatory planning, but I can tell you that those of us who sort of started thinking about this a long time ago, who've continued to write about it and sort of respond to various reactions and criticisms and, but this isn't going to work, or I don't like that part. Basically, the participatory planning procedure was designed to try and overcome what I would call the blind spot on the socialist side for the need for a legitimate autonomy in decision-making for workers in their own workplaces and consumers in their own neighborhoods. That blind spot in this traditional socialist thinking, and also the blind spot over in many anarchist approaches, which basically comes down to, well, we have decision-making, the workers in their workplace are autonomous, but what does that actually mean? How do they coordinate with one another? The fact that there has to be coordination and that what one workplace decides has impacts on other workplaces and other neighborhoods, how do you actually work that out? I think the anarchist tendency has either been to say, oh, if they just won in Spain, it would have worked. I think that had they not lost the war in Spain, that had anarchists not figured out any better how they were actually going to solve that problem, that they would have basically discovered that they didn't have the answer, that they didn't have the answer that would work back then. In any case,